Friends, we're so glad to be here today for our monthly Cyclical San Diego interview. Today, I'm really glad to be having a conversation with Reverend Fairlight Collins Lower. Most of you know her as the former moderator of our presbytery and the current chair of the executive committee. And today, we'd like to dive into a conversation about a facet of life and ministry that perhaps you're not as familiar with. And so, Fairlight, I'd just love to jump in with this first question. What caused you to consider joining the Cyclical San Diego Discerners cohort?
Thanks, Daniel, for that question. Yeah, so I have been part of this presbytery for a while, and I had been, I interviewed at a few different things. Things just weren't happening. And then I started to notice more and more friends, even some strangers, people I was just meeting, saying, wow, if you had a church, I would come to it. And so with these other doors closing, I thought, well, this is interesting. Should I be paying more attention to this? And so September, a couple of years ago, I did a funeral for one of my best friend's brothers, who was an addict and died related to his addiction. And at the funeral, I didn't just talk about like his being united with his creator, his heavenly parent, and being freed from those troubles. I also talked about how hard life was with him and the others around him. And we kind of acknowledged that. And afterwards, I was approached by several people, and I realized that there's kind of this space I can hold somewhere, a tension between the unchurched and the traditional church. I have liturgical leanings and ritual but I get it, like there's some differences that maybe I bring to the table, so I got it. But I was like, maybe I need to turn and focus and my focus towards that. And then 2 months later, I'm asked to be the moderator of San Diego Presbytery. God is hilarious. So I have one foot in this discernment process with new worshiping community, and the other is sort of, ankle deep in the institutional church. And now as the chair of the executive committee, as you mentioned, now it's taken me knee deep. But I love every minute of kind of being in these two spaces and in the process of discerning. And eventually, really kind of on the precipice of starting, because right before COVID hit, some really wonderful things have been taking place with some people. And then, now we call them gatherings, and we can't even gather. So, well, we're looking at it's new ways to do that. And I'm also excited about some of the chaos that's been created and what it's asking all of us to think about. What is church? Who is church? So yeah, so that's kind of how I start. I think I came to the September, October meeting, and there it was.
Yeah, I really appreciate, and I think it's something a lot of us who have been ministers in an established church setting for a long time, of course, we have a heart for, we love those who are outside of the church, and we want to be able to share the good news, the hope of Jesus with them. But a lot of times we find ourselves drifting further and further away from them. And so I love this tension that you're describing, and really that unique space that you're able to hold and to connect with folks that may have considered themselves outside of faith, but somehow God has been positioning you uniquely to be able to connect both inside and outside of what we would consider traditional church.
Yeah. And I looked around, I was like, wow, like 80% of my friends, neighbors, community is unchurched. And sometimes I'll be told, like, I just really appreciate how you ask questions, or you don't assume things, and being able to say, okay, what does that mean then for what do I do here with these folks who are looking for connection, meaning, just who we're made to be.
Yeah, that makes me wonder. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the people that you dream of gathering in a new worshiping community. And that's kind of with a very wide ecclesiology, maybe not like a traditional church with a building and all of that, or it could be, but really it's about the people. And I know you mentioned right at the cusp of COVID, there were some sparks of life beginning to happen, and you've made some adjustments and pivots. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the dream of a gathering.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have done some dreaming, of course, and some of it putting, down on paper on post-it notes, or and so I like my community like I like my coffee. Organic, fair trade, and shade grown. You thought I was going to say something else. Okay. But organic, fair trade, and shade grown. And so here's what I mean. And I've thought about this. So organic, meaning not a forced community, right? Not like we have to gather. It's got to be this time, this day, doing this, and everyone has to look the same, right? But like a seed buried, vulnerable, and yet transforming the soil, the system from underneath the ground, just like the kingdom, the reign of God, and yet connected to those natural rhythms of life, to the seasons, kind of recognizing. So in that sense, or organic, and also organic in the sense of anybody and everybody, right? But also shade grown. So people who are like unwilling, here's what I'm getting from shade grown. People who are willing to admit, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm committed to growing out of the shade, right? If there's dark places in life, bringing light and hope to those, but folks who can take the worst that's happened in life and life around us, and grow from it, and not be quick to spiritually bypass what's happening. Or I call it God-splain it, where you're quick to just jump over the pain, find the reason it's happening, and no, let's hang out in the shade here a little bit and grow, and just recognize we've all got it. And then fair trade. So yeah, people who care about justice, but also people who can be fair, just, honest with each other, and see other people's perspectives, listen, learn from each other. I know there's a tendency to have a great homogeneity when it comes to ecclesial bodies, gatherings, any people, organizations, people groups, clubs, right? But really folks who are coming from different angles on things and can trade stories, trade perspectives. Brené Brown, you might know her, a psychologist. She writes about vulnerability and shame and compassion, moving towards compassion. So she says, in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it, and not how you imagine their experiences to be. So yeah, I picture people who are willing to do that, as hard as that is, to have that fair trade of ideas and experiences. And we're right now, oh my gosh, we are not in that climate. We are in the, we're moving more towards, I'm going to unfriend you, cut you off, disengage. But I think the future of humanity are folks who can have honest conversations and try to, see experiences as other people see it. So those are the kind of people, yeah, that I think would be a great community. And that
Yeah.
I have seen, if I look at, the folks that have been in that gathering, we really gathered around the refugee asylum seeker crisis that was happening, and coming together to support a local shelter. And also my family and I began hosting asylum seekers on their way from detention centers to their families or friends or sponsors here in the States. So just having my natural community kind of come around that. So it's been interesting to watch, but also the conversations that causes, because no, not everybody sees eye to eye on that, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So.
And Fairlight, that's awesome. I mean, we in San Diego, we have such a strong sort of like craft coffee culture. And I think, I think about like the way that all of my favorite coffee shops and roasters influence and create community in their local neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And as you're describing this really beautiful vision for a holistic spiritual community, it reminds me of like, that's what that would look like in your neighborhood. And that would naturally connect with folks in a way that would transform their lives. I love that idea that Jesus is at work out there, and you have that discernment to kind of understand and the courage to jump in and be a part of that. Yeah. I want to ask too, because we in our both discerners cohort and in the starters cohort, as you've kind of transitioned over to there,
Yeah.
we've benefited greatly from your friendship, from your wisdom, from your insights. That's been awesome. And I think the mutuality is a huge part of what makes Cyclical who we are. But I'd like to hear more a little bit from you as well about how Cyclical has been helpful in your discernment process, maybe cohort meetings or coaching or friendships, whatever it might be.
It, I was, it's unbelievable. Like I can almost remember, I can remember every single meeting, like the speaker or the topic. It's just been incredibly life-giving. And really, I'm going to call her out, Jaya, my sister Jaya. She has been this little bird on my shoulder, talking to me about this. And really, I've called her just my biggest cheerleader. She's so encouraging. And at the times when I feel a little defeated, she's been there and she's been encouraging me. So really, I had these kind of ideas milling, and then she kind of helped push me out of the nest a little bit and learn to fly. So, but the ideas that I've discovered, it's incredible. The encouragement, new ways of seeing lots of things. The speakers that you find, Daniel, are just amazing. And I know sometimes that word is overused, but really awe-inspiring. The stories, the insights, of the stories of other folks that are there. I'm so encouraged. The insights that they have, the connection, because there are people that are way further ahead than I am, and it's so great to learn from that. But also learning, the generation of more ideas. God giving birth, and we're the midwives. Or when Jamie came and talked about lament. Jesus and the way of disability, disability in the way of Jesus. Oh my word, all these things, decolonizing the church, right? So many perspectives every single time. And then from those connections, just broadening my circle and realizing, wow, I'm not alone in this. There's so many people who are doing it, trying it, it's encouraging. And then being part of not just San Diego Presbytery in 1001, but also other organizations, Parish Collective, Thresholds, Global Immersion Project. So, and then my coach, I love my coach. I'm probably in a unique position here because my coach and I have been friends since the 90s. I'm that old. And, and yet we had this long hiatus. And then we're reconnected really through this. And he has been so not just encouraging of the discernment process, but of me and places where I need to stop, places start, but the pauses I've had to take, those kind of things. The absolute lack of judgment. I mean, he doesn't. I mean, I don't know, he doesn't judge me at all, right? It's just it's very freeing to know that this process is organic. But again, there's nothing forced upon me. So it's been eye-opening. I feel like I could just keep saying more. I love Cyclical. I'm a better person because of Cyclical. My faith is deeper because of Cyclical. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And as I said, I mean, I think the mutuality, the journeying together and getting to see what God is doing in each of our lives, that's just been so deeply enriching. And
yeah.
one of those funny ways that God works, where it's not just a one-to-one correlation. Oh, someone has an idea and I'll borrow it. But it's more that inspiration, and then God does something on the inside, and then it comes out in another way in my life and community. And so I am really grateful for your openness and your willingness to just step forward into something that it's not easy. And yet there is really clearly, as I've been honored to walk alongside this journey of starting a new worshiping community of some kind, I'm been seeing the ways that your love for God and your love for people are leading you to folks that would have felt outside of that. And I know for all of us who are pastors and church leaders, that breaks our hearts. We want everyone to know how much God loves them. But unless leaders like you show up to embody that, a lot of people go through life not knowing it. And so I'm really grateful that you're responding to that call. And I think this is an invitation as we kind of bring it in for a landing here. It's an
Yeah.
invitation for anyone who sees this conversation in some way to be a part of it through prayer. And that's something about being the church out in the world. It's not just sort of like thoughts and prayers on the internet, but this is real life stuff. People can join in and be a part of what God is doing in and through you. So if you can, could you share maybe 2 or 3 ways that people can pray for you?
Thank you. Yes. So please pray. I think this is for me, but I really feel like it's for everybody. It's just a little more self-compassion and a little more compassion. I recently was listening to a podcast, and at the end of it, the speaker, she said, kiss your hand, kiss your own hand, kiss your hand. It's such an incredible, like, I was like, I don't do that a lot, and just, to remind myself, this is a really trying time for everyone, no matter what your vocation, what your job, because most of us are doing many things at the same time. I'm doing this with you, but I'm like, where's my child, and just to have that compassion for ourselves, but also it's getting a little more tenuous right now. And just to have compassion for other people, because if I'm feeling this, I know other people are too. And to pray for peace, peace in relationships, peace and that fair trade of conversation. But that means you have to go towards conflict, right? And then for peace. Um, and then this process has been quite a journey. It's still a journey. I know it'll always be a journey, but just for I sometimes want to do more. And I think I'm supposed to orchestrate things sometimes. And yes, I am. I have responsibility, but I would ask for more trust in Jesus, and that God is Lord and commander of my life and knows what's up. And so my best laid plans, because God's hilarious, are often not what it happens. So, but just being open to like, okay, I did my best with this, and God had something else in mind, and just to stay there and trust.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're so excited for the next chapter of this story that God is writing, and we're so grateful that you took time to have this conversation today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Peace.